Single dad was rejected for bringing his daughter to a job interview, until the billionaire CEO appeared. Just before we start, this community spans every continent. Drop your city's name if you feel comfortable sharing. Michael Torres stared at the gleaming marble floors of Technova Industries, his worn sneakers squeaking against the polished surface. His 6-year-old daughter Emma pressed close to his side, her bright brown eyes taking in every detail of the luxurious lobby. At 35, Michael had been unemployed for 8 months, watching his savings dwindle to almost nothing. Today's interview was his last hope. "Daddy, why are there so many numbers on that wall?" Emma whispered, pointing to an intricate mathematical display that stretched across the reception area. "It's just decoration, sweetheart," Michael replied, though he recognized it as a complex algorithmic pattern. His computer science background made him appreciate the elegance, but right now, he needed to focus on landing this junior developer position. The receptionist, a stern woman in her 50s named Margaret, looked up from her desk with obvious disapproval. Her gaze traveled from Michael's slightly frayed collar to Emma's small backpack decorated with cartoon characters. "Mr. Torres?" Margaret's voice carried the chill of winter wind. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," Michael said, forcing confidence into his voice. "I have a 3 o'clock interview with Mr. Harrison from Human Resources." Margaret's expression hardened further. "Sir, this is a professional environment. We don't allow children during interviews. I'm afraid you'll need to reschedule when you can arrange proper childcare." Michael's heart sank. He'd spent his last money on bus fare and couldn't afford a babysitter. His elderly neighbor who usually watched Emma was in the hospital. "Please," he began. "I can't reschedule. This position closes today. Emma will be quiet, I promise." "Company policy is non-negotiable," Margaret declared, already reaching for her phone. "I'll call security if necessary." Emma tugged on Michael's jacket. "Daddy, those numbers are wrong," she said softly, still staring at the wall display. Margaret scoffed. "Little girl, that's a $1 million algorithmic art piece designed by MIT graduates. I hardly think a child would understand." But Emma had already walked toward the display, her small finger tracing patterns in the air. Michael watched in amazement as his daughter began pointing out inconsistencies in the mathematical sequence that he himself hadn't immediately noticed. The elevator chimed and someone stepped into the lobby. Margaret straightened her posture instantly, her demeanor shifting to professional politeness. "Ms. Chen, I wasn't expecting you back from the conference until tomorrow." Michael turned to see a young Asian woman in an elegant navy suit, her presence commanding despite her petite frame. At 27, Sophia Chen had built Technova from a garage startup into a $100 million company. Her sharp eyes surveyed the scene with curious intelligence. "There seems to be some tension here," Sophia observed, her voice carrying a subtle authority that made everyone in the lobby pay attention. Margaret quickly explained, "Just a misunderstanding, Ms. Chen. This gentleman brought a child to his interview. I was explaining our policy." Sophia's gaze moved from Michael's nervous face to Emma, who had continued studying the mathematical display, completely absorbed in the patterns. Something flickered in the CEO's expression. Recognition, perhaps, or intrigue. "What's your name?" Sophia asked, addressing Emma directly. "Emma Torres," the little girl replied without looking away from the wall. "Are you the person who made these number pictures?" "I am. What do you think of them?" "Think of—" Emma finally turned around, her young face serious with concentration. "They're beautiful, but there's a mistake in sequence 7. The Fibonacci progression breaks pattern at the 43rd iteration." The lobby fell completely silent. Margaret's mouth opened slightly while Michael stared at his daughter in shock. He knew Emma was bright, but this level of mathematical comprehension was beyond anything he'd witnessed. Sophia took a step closer, her business heels clicking against the marble. "Show me." Emma approached the display again, pointing to a section about 8 feet up the wall. "Right here. See how the numbers should flow? But this one jumps ahead too quickly. It doesn't follow the golden ratio properly." Sophia pulled out her phone and called someone. "David? Yes, I need you to check the algorithmic display in the main lobby. Specifically sequence 7, iteration 43. She paused, listening. A 6-year-old just identified an error that our entire development team missed. Michael felt the world shifting around him. This couldn't be happening. His unemployed status, his desperate situation, and now his daughter was demonstrating mathematical abilities that seemed to impress one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in the city. "Mr. Torres?" Sophia said, turning her attention to him fully for the first time. "What's your background?" Computer science, artificial intelligence specialization. I worked for DataStream Solutions until they downsized 8 months ago. His voice gained strength as he spoke about his expertise. I specialized in pattern recognition algorithms and machine learning applications. DataStream, Sophia repeated thoughtfully. You wouldn't happen to be the Michael Torres who developed the predictive modeling system that increased their client retention by 37%? Michael blinked in surprise. You know about that? I've been following your work for 3 years. DataStream's sudden improvement in client analytics didn't go unnoticed in our industry. Sophia's expression had completely changed from polite interest to focused attention. When they let you go, I actually considered reaching out, but I assumed you'd already been snapped up by a competitor. No one wanted to hire someone from a failed company, Michael said bitterly, and having a daughter to care for made the job search more complicated. Margaret cleared her throat nervously. Ms. Chen, should I call security to escort them out? Absolutely not, Sophia said sharply. Margaret, please cancel my 4 o'clock meeting and reserve conference room A for the next hour. She turned back to Michael and Emma. Mr. Torres, I'd like to discuss a position that just became available. And Emma, she looked down at the little girl with genuine respect. I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on mathematical patterns. Emma beamed, her earlier shyness completely gone. Can I see more number pictures? I think that can be arranged, Sophia smiled. But first I need to understand something. Emma, how did you learn to see patterns like that? They just make sense. Emma shrugged. Like music, but with numbers. Daddy shows me puzzles sometimes, but mostly I just see how things fit together. Michael's mind raced. In 8 months of unemployment, he'd never imagined that Emma's unusual talents might be relevant to his career prospects. He'd always known she was exceptionally bright, but her mathematical intuition seemed to operate on a level that defied her age. Mr. Torres, Sophia said, before we go upstairs, I need to ask you something directly. Are you genuinely interested in working here, or is this just about desperate circumstances? Michael looked down at Emma, who was still studying the mathematical display with fascination, then back at Sophia Chen. This woman had built an empire by recognizing talent and potential where others saw only obstacles. 6 months ago, it would have been about the work. He answered honestly. Right now, yes, I'm desperate. But I've researched Technova extensively. Your approach to artificial intelligence applications, your commitment to ethical development practices, your innovation in predictive analytics, this is exactly the kind of work I want to be doing. Sophia nodded approvingly. Honesty. I appreciate that. And Emma's mathematical abilities. Is this something new, or has she always demonstrated this level of comprehension? She's always been bright, Michael said carefully. But this level of pattern recognition, I'm seeing it for the first time today. Interesting. Sophia glanced at her watch. Let's go upstairs. I have a proposition that might benefit all of us. As they walked toward the elevator, Emma skipped ahead, chattering excitedly about the mathematical patterns she'd noticed in the lobby's design. Margaret watched them go with barely concealed shock, her carefully maintained professional facade cracked by the morning's unexpected developments. Michael felt a cautious hope beginning to build in his chest. 8 months of rejection and mounting desperation had taught him not to expect miracles. But sometimes, he thought as he watched his daughter's animated conversation with one of the most successful businesswomen in the city, miracles came disguised as ordinary Tuesday afternoons. The elevator doors closed behind them, carrying Michael toward a conversation that would change everything. The 42nd floor of Technova Industries offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline, but Michael barely noticed the panoramic windows as Sophia Chen led them into conference room A. The space was minimalist and modern, dominated by a glass table and state-of-the-art presentation equipment. Please sit, Sophia gestured to the chairs around the table. Emma, would you like something to drink? We have apple juice. Yes, please. Emma climbed into a chair that seemed enormous compared to her small frame. Ms. Chen, do you make computer games? Not exactly games, Sophia smiled, taking a seat across from them. We create programs that help computers think more like humans. It's called artificial intelligence. Emma's eyes lit up. Like robots? More like teaching computers to solve problems and recognize patterns, the way you did downstairs with the numbers. Michael watched this exchange with growing amazement. His daughter, who was usually shy around strangers, seemed completely comfortable with this powerful businesswoman. Meanwhile, Sophia, known in the tech world for her no-nonsense approach and demanding standards, was patiently explaining complex concepts to a 6-year-old. Mr. Torres, Sophia said, shifting her attention, While Emma continued to examine the high-tech conference room, "I need to be direct about something. The junior developer position you applied for has been filled." Michael's heart plummeted. He'd allowed himself to hope, and now reality was crashing back. "However," Sophia continued before he could respond, "I have something else in mind. Are you familiar with our project synthesis?" "Only what's public knowledge," Michael replied carefully. "Advanced pattern recognition for financial markets, but the details are classified." "Exactly. We're developing an AI system that can predict market trends by identifying subtle patterns that human analysts miss. The project has been stalled for 6 months because our current algorithms lack the intuitive leap that separates good analysis from breakthrough innovation." She paused as an assistant entered with Emma's apple juice and coffee for the adults. What Emma demonstrated downstairs, that instantaneous recognition of pattern disruption, that's exactly what we need to solve. Not just her specific ability, but understanding how that kind of intuitive mathematical thinking works. Michael set down his coffee cup carefully. "Are you suggesting Emma could somehow contribute to your project?" "Not directly, of course, she's 6 years old. But I'm wondering if her pattern recognition abilities might provide insights that could help us refine our approach. And frankly, Mr. Torres, based on your background and the work you did at DataStream, I believe you could be the bridge between Emma's intuitive understanding and practical application." Emma looked up from her juice box. "Daddy, is this about the number pictures?" "Sort of, sweetheart," Michael said, his mind racing through the implications. "Ms. Chen thinks your ability to see patterns might help solve problems." "I like solving problems," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Can I see more number pictures?" Sophia pressed a button, and one wall of the conference room transformed into a massive display screen. Complex data flows and algorithmic patterns appeared, far more sophisticated than the lobby display. "This is what we're working on," Sophia explained, "teaching computers to recognize patterns in financial data that predict when stock prices will rise or fall." Emma stared at the display for several minutes, her brow furrowed in concentration. Finally, she pointed to a section of flowing data. "That part is scared," she said simply. "Scared?" Sophia leaned forward with interest. "The numbers are jumping around too much, like when I'm nervous and can't sit still. The other numbers flow like water, but those ones are all jumpy." Michael stared at the screen where Emma was pointing. She'd identified a volatility cluster that represented periods of market uncertainty, the exact phenomenon that Project Synthesis was designed to predict. "Emma," Sophia said slowly, "you just identified something that took our team 3 weeks to program the computer to recognize." "It's easy," Emma shrugged. "Numbers have feelings, kind of. Happy numbers flow smooth, sad numbers go down, angry numbers spike up fast, and scared numbers jump around." Sophia and Michael exchanged glances. Emma's anthropomorphic description of mathematical behavior was surprisingly accurate in terms of market psychology. "Ms. Chen," Michael said carefully, "what exactly are you proposing?" "I'm offering you the position of senior developer on Project Synthesis, with a starting salary of $120,000 annually, plus benefits and equity options." Michael nearly choked on his coffee. The salary was more than double what he'd been making at DataStream, and the equity options could be worth millions if Technova continued its growth trajectory. "But that's contingent on your willingness to collaborate with our team in understanding how intuitive pattern recognition works." Not using Emma as a test subject, Sophia clarified quickly, "but helping us understand the cognitive processes that allow some people to see patterns that others miss." Emma had wandered over to another display panel and was tracing shapes in the air again. "This one's happy," she announced. "It's like a dance." "That's our most successful algorithm," Sophia murmured to Michael. "The one that's been generating consistent profits for 8 months. Michael felt overwhelmed by the sudden shift in his circumstances. 8 months of unemployment, of watching his savings disappear, of lying awake at night wondering how he'd provide for Emma. And now he was being offered not just a job, but a career opportunity that seemed almost too good to be true. "Why?" he asked finally. "Why are you willing to take this chance on us?" Sophia was quiet for a moment, watching Emma interact with the displays. 3 years ago I was where you are now. Not unemployed, but underestimated. I was 24, trying to convince investors to fund a company led by someone they saw as too young, too inexperienced. A tech industry that often overlooks unconventional perspectives. She turned back to Michael. "I've learned that breakthrough innovation comes from seeing things differently. Emma sees mathematical patterns in a way that's completely unique. You have the technical expertise to translate that insight into practical applications. Together, you represent exactly the kind of unconventional thinking that drives real progress. And if Emma's pattern recognition doesn't translate into useful applications, then you're still an extremely talented developer with a proven track record, and I've gained a valuable team member. But I have a feeling that Emma's abilities are more significant than we currently understand. Emma returned to the table, having apparently satisfied her curiosity about the displays. Daddy, I like it here. The numbers are friendly. Michael looked at his daughter's happy face, then at Sophia Chen, who was offering him the opportunity he'd dreamed of but never expected to receive. There's one condition, he said finally. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Yes? Emma's education and well-being come first. Always. If participating in this project ever seems to be harming her development or putting pressure on her, we stop immediately. Agreed, Sophia said without hesitation. In fact, I'd insist on it. What Emma has is a gift, not a tool to be exploited. She extended her hand across the table. Welcome to Technova, Mr. Torres. As Michael shook her hand, he felt the weight of 8 months of struggle lifting from his shoulders. But more than that, he saw something in Sophia's eyes that he hadn't encountered in any of his previous interviews. Genuine respect for both his capabilities and his priorities as a father. When would you like me to start? How about Monday? That gives you the weekend to process this change and make arrangements for Emma's care during work hours. Actually, Emma piped up, can I come visit the numbers sometimes? Sophia laughed, the first truly relaxed sound Michael had heard from her. I think we can arrange for some weekend visits, but only if you promise to tell us when the numbers are feeling scared. I promise, Emma said solemnly. As they prepared to leave, Michael realized that his desperate gamble, bringing Emma to the interview because he had no other choice, had transformed into the most important decision of his career. Sometimes, he thought, the very thing that seemed like your biggest obstacle turned out to be your greatest advantage. But something in Sophia's expression suggested that this was only the beginning of a much larger story. The weekend passed in a blur of logistics and barely contained excitement. Michael had called his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, from the hospital to share the good news, and her tearful joy had been almost as overwhelming as his own relief. Emma spent Saturday afternoon drawing pictures of happy numbers and asking endless questions about whether computers could really learn to think. Sunday evening found Michael standing in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting the tie he'd bought with money from his new signing bonus. The face looking back at him showed the first signs of hope he'd seen in months. Daddy, you look fancy, Emma observed from the doorway, still in her pajamas. I want to make a good impression on my first day, Michael replied, though privately he wondered if he'd dreamed the entire encounter with Sophia Chen. The employment contract sitting on his kitchen table suggested otherwise, but the transformation in his circumstances still felt surreal. Monday morning arrived with the first warm sunshine they'd seen in weeks. Michael dropped Emma off at her regular daycare, now affordable again thanks to his new salary, and took the bus to Technova Industries. The building looked different somehow, less intimidating than it had during his desperate interview attempt just 3 days earlier. Margaret, the receptionist who had tried to have him removed, offered a strained smile as he approached her desk. Mr. Torres, Ms. Chen is expecting you. 22nd floor, elevator bank B. The 22nd floor buzzed with activity. Dozens of developers sat at workstations surrounded by multiple monitors, their fingers flying across keyboards as lines of code scrolled past. Michael felt a familiar thrill at being back in his element. This was where he belonged. Michael! Sophia Chen emerged from a corner office looking every bit as polished and confident as she had during their interview. Perfect timing. Let me introduce you to the team. She led him through the maze of workstations, stopping at clusters of developers who looked up with varying degrees of curiosity and welcome. Michael recognized some names from their reputations in the industry. Technova had assembled an impressive collection of talent. This is your workstation, Sophia said, gesturing to a setup that included 3 large monitors and hardware that represented the latest in development technology. And this is David Kim, your project partner. David Kim stood up from the adjacent workstation, extending his hand with a warm smile. In his early 30s, with an easy manner and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, he seemed like someone Michael could work with comfortably. I've been following your work since the data stream innovations, David said as they shook hands. That predictive modeling system was brilliant. I'm excited to see what you can bring to project synthesis. From what Ms. Chen showed me, You're working on some fascinating challenges, Michael replied. I'm eager to dig in. About that, Sophia interjected. Before you get too deep into the technical aspects, I want you to understand the bigger picture. David, could you show Michael the presentation? David activated the wall display, and a series of charts and graphs appeared, showing market analysis data spanning several years. Project Synthesis is designed to identify market inefficiencies by recognizing patterns that human analysts miss, David explained. Our current algorithms are successful about 68% of the time, which is good but not revolutionary. The breakthrough, Sophia added, would be pushing that success rate into the 80s or 90s. That level of accuracy would fundamentally change how financial markets operate. Michael studied the data flows, his trained eye picking up the subtle signatures of different market conditions. What's been the main obstacle? Emotional variables, David said. Markets aren't just mathematical systems, they're psychological systems. Fear, greed, confidence, panic. These human emotions create patterns that pure mathematical analysis struggles to capture. Which brings us back to Emma's observations, Sophia said. Her description of numbers having feelings, scared numbers jumping around, happy numbers flowing smoothly. That anthropomorphic interpretation actually aligns with market psychology in ways that surprised us. Michael felt a familiar excitement building as he began to understand the scope of the challenge. You want to create algorithms that don't just analyze mathematical patterns, but also recognize the emotional signatures that drive those patterns. Exactly. And we think Emma's intuitive understanding of pattern behavior might provide insights that could help us develop those algorithms. David pulled up another display showing Emma's observations from their Friday meeting, cross-referenced with actual market performance data. Look at this, he said, pointing to a cluster of volatility that Emma had described as scared numbers. That period corresponded exactly with a market uncertainty event that preceded a significant downturn by 3 days. Our algorithms identified the mathematical volatility, but they missed the predictive significance. Emma saw it immediately, Sophia added. Not the financial implications, of course, but the underlying pattern disruption that signaled instability. Michael spent the morning diving into the project's technical documentation, and the more he understood, the more excited he became. This wasn't just about creating another financial tool. They were working on artificial intelligence that could bridge the gap between mathematical analysis and intuitive understanding. During lunch, David shared more about the team dynamics and Technova's culture. Sophia's demanding, he said, but she's also remarkably supportive of innovative thinking. She's built an environment where we can take risks and explore unconventional approaches. That's been my impression so far, Michael agreed. But I have to ask, is everyone comfortable with the idea of a 6-year-old contributing insights to a multi-million-dollar project? David laughed. Actually, most of the team is fascinated by it. We've been stuck on the intuitive leap problem for months. The idea that a child's pattern recognition might hold the key to solving it. It's the kind of breakthrough thinking that attracted us to work here in the first place. The afternoon brought Michael's first hands-on work with the actual synthesis algorithms. As he examined the code structure, he began to see how Emma's observations might translate into programming solutions. Her anthropomorphic descriptions of mathematical behavior could become parameters for emotional pattern recognition, teaching computers to identify the psychological signatures that preceded market movements. At 5 o'clock, Sophia stopped by his workstation. How was your first day? Overwhelming in the best possible way, Michael replied honestly. This project is more ambitious than I realized, and I think there are approaches we haven't explored yet. Such as? Michael pulled up a section of code on his screen. Emma described scared numbers as jumpy, but she also said they reminded her of when she's nervous and can't sit still. That suggests that volatility patterns might mirror anxiety behaviors in humans. If we could map those behavioral patterns into algorithmic recognition systems, we could predict market anxiety before it becomes widespread panic, Sophia finished, her eyes lighting up with understanding. Exactly. It's not just about identifying mathematical volatility, it's about recognizing the emotional precursors that create that volatility. Sophia was quiet for a moment, and Michael could almost see her processing the implications. I knew hiring you was the right decision, she said finally, but this is going to be bigger than I originally envisioned. How much bigger? Big enough that we might need to involve Emma more directly than I originally planned. Not as a test subject, she clarified quickly, but as a consultant. Her pattern recognition abilities could be the key to breakthrough applications beyond just financial markets. Michael felt a mixture of excitement and caution. The opportunities were enormous, but his protective instincts as a father remained strong. "We proceed carefully," he said. "Emma's well-being comes first." "Agreed. But Michael, what we're discovering about intuitive pattern recognition, this could revolutionize not just financial analysis, but artificial intelligence development in general. We might be on the verge of teaching computers to truly think like humans." As Michael packed up his workstation for the day, he realized that his employment at Technova was evolving into something far more significant than he'd originally understood. Emma's gift wasn't just helping him find a job. It might be the foundation for innovations that could change the world. But as he headed toward the elevator, he couldn't shake the feeling that Sophia Chen knew more about Emma's abilities than she'd revealed. There was something in her expression, a recognition that went beyond simple appreciation for mathematical talent. The elevator doors closed, carrying him down toward the lobby where his new life was just beginning to unfold. But questions lingered in his mind, questions that would soon demand answers. 3 weeks into his new position at Technova, Michael Torres had fallen into a routine that felt almost too good to be true. Each morning he dropped Emma off at daycare, spent his days working on cutting-edge artificial intelligence with some of the brightest minds in the industry, and picked up his daughter with the satisfaction of meaningful work accomplished. The project synthesis team had made remarkable progress. By incorporating Emma's intuitive descriptions of pattern behavior, they developed new algorithms that pushed their market prediction accuracy from 68% to 74%. It was significant progress, but Sophia Chen had made it clear that revolutionary breakthrough required even higher accuracy rates. "The difference between good and world-changing is in the details," she'd told the team during their weekly progress meeting. "We need to understand not just what Emma sees, but how she sees it." That Friday afternoon, Michael was deep in code optimization when David Kim approached his workstation with an expression of barely contained excitement. "Michael, you need to see this," David said, pulling up a chair. "I've been analyzing the correlation between Emma's pattern descriptions and actual market movements, and I found something incredible." He activated Michael's secondary monitor and displayed a series of graphs. "Remember when Emma described some numbers as lonely? I mapped every instance where she used that word, and look at the correlation." Michael studied the data with growing amazement. Every pattern Emma had described as lonely preceded market sectors that became isolated from broader economic trends, often signaling either breakthrough opportunities or significant failures. "This is impossible," Michael murmured. "She's 6 years old. How could she intuitively recognize market isolation patterns that our most sophisticated algorithms miss?" "That's what I've been wondering," David replied. "So I did some research into pattern recognition abilities in children. Michael, I think Emma might have what's called exceptional cognitive pattern synthesis. It's incredibly rare, maybe 1 in 10 million people." Michael felt a chill of both pride and apprehension. What does that mean exactly? "People with this ability can perceive mathematical relationships and patterns at a subconscious level that operates faster than analytical thinking. They don't calculate the patterns. They feel them. It's like having a sixth sense for mathematical harmony and disruption." "And you think Emma has this?" "I think Emma has it in a way that's never been documented before. Most people with exceptional pattern synthesis excel in one area: music, mathematics, or visual arts. Emma seems to apply it universally to any mathematical system she encounters." Michael stared at the correlation data on his screen. His daughter's casual observations were proving to be more accurate than computer systems that had cost millions of dollars to develop. The implications were staggering and terrifying. "David, who else knows about this research?" "Just you and me so far. But Michael, we have to tell Sophia. This could be the breakthrough that makes Project Synthesis revolutionary instead of just successful." That evening, Michael picked up Emma from daycare and spent the drive home studying her face in the rearview mirror. She was chattering about her day, completely unaware that her brain might work in ways that defied scientific understanding. "Daddy, can we visit the number pictures again this weekend?" Emma asked as they pulled into their apartment complex. "Maybe, sweetheart. Would you like that?" "Yes. I want to see if any new ones are sad or happy." Michael carried Emma upstairs to their modest apartment, his mind racing with questions. How long had she possessed this ability? Was it developing as she grew older, or had he simply failed to notice it before? And most importantly, what responsibilities did he have to protect her from a world that might see her gift as something to be exploited? The next morning brought an unexpected call from Sophia Chen. Michael, I hope I'm not interrupting your weekend, but I've been reviewing David's research on pattern recognition abilities. Could you and Emma come in this afternoon? There's something I need to discuss with both of you. 2 hours later, Michael and Emma sat in Sophia's corner office, which offered an even more spectacular view of the city than the conference room where they'd first met. Emma was fascinated by a small Zen garden on Sophia's desk, carefully rearranging the sand patterns with her finger. Emma, Sophia said gently, do you remember the number pictures you looked at when you first came here? The happy ones and the scared ones? Emma looked up from the Zen garden. Yes, they were pretty. You told us that some numbers have feelings. Can you explain what you mean by that? Emma considered this seriously, her young face scrunched in concentration. It's like, when I look at number patterns, they tell me stories. Happy numbers dance together like they're friends. Sad numbers fall down like tears. Angry numbers spike up fast like when I'm upset. And scared numbers jump around because they don't know what to do. Sophia glanced at Michael, who was listening with the same fascination he'd felt during Emma's first pattern analysis. Emma, what if I told you that your ability to see these number feelings could help lots of people make better decisions about important things? What kind of decisions? Emma asked, her attention now fully focused on Sophia. Well, some grown-ups need to decide when to buy or sell things that cost lots of money. If they could understand when numbers are feeling scared or happy, they could make better choices. Emma nodded solemnly. That makes sense. When I'm scared, I don't make good choices either. Sophia leaned forward slightly. Would you be interested in helping us understand how you see these patterns? Not all the time, just sometimes when it's fun for you? Michael felt his protective instincts flare. Sophia, we need to be very careful about this. Emma's just a child. Of course, Sophia agreed quickly. I'm not suggesting anything that would interfere with her normal childhood. But Michael, what Emma has could benefit millions of people. Financial markets affect everyone. Retirement funds, college savings, home purchases. More accurate market predictions could help ordinary families make better financial decisions. She turned back to Emma. What do you think, Emma? Would you like to look at more number pictures sometimes and tell us what stories they tell you? Can Daddy be with me? Absolutely. Your daddy would be with you every time. Emma looked at Michael for guidance, and he saw in her eyes the same trust she'd always placed in him to make decisions about her welfare. If you want to help people, sweetheart, and if it's fun for you, then it might be okay. But if you ever don't want to do it anymore, you can stop anytime. I want to help, Emma said with the earnest determination that Michael recognized as one of her most endearing qualities. Sophia smiled, but Michael noticed something else in her expression, a look of intense satisfaction, as if Emma's agreement confirmed something she'd been hoping for. There's one more thing, Sophia said, addressing Michael directly. I want to bring in Dr. Sarah Martinez, a cognitive psychologist who specializes in exceptional abilities in children, not to study Emma like a test subject, but to help us understand how to nurture her gift while protecting her emotional development. What kind of understanding are we talking about? Michael asked carefully. Think of Dr. Martinez as Emma's advocate. Her job would be to ensure that anything we do supports Emma's growth and happiness, not just our business objectives. She would also help us understand the best ways to engage with Emma's abilities, without creating pressure or expectations that could be harmful. Michael considered this. The offer seemed reasonable, and having a child psychologist involved would provide additional protection for Emma's welfare. I'd want to meet Dr. Martinez before agreeing to anything, he said. Absolutely. In fact, she's available to meet with you Monday morning, if that works for you. Emma had returned her attention to the Zen garden, but Michael noticed she was creating mathematical patterns in the sand, spirals and geometric shapes that demonstrated the same intuitive understanding of spatial relationships that she applied to numerical patterns. Emma, do you have any questions about helping with the number pictures? Sophia asked. Emma looked up thoughtfully. Will there be new kinds of number pictures? I've never seen sad numbers before that day in the lobby, and I wonder what other feelings numbers can have. I think we can find some very interesting number pictures for you to explore, Sophia replied. Some might show numbers that are excited or confused or even surprised. Numbers can be surprised? Emma's eyes widened with delight. Oh yes, sometimes numbers encounter situations they didn't expect, and they react just like people do when they're surprised. Michael watched this exchange with growing unease. Sophia's enthusiasm for Emma's abilities was evident, but something about her responses suggested she had specific applications in mind, applications she wasn't sharing. Ms. Chen, Michael said, I appreciate the opportunities you're offering, and I'm grateful for the job and the chance to work on Project Synthesis. But I need to be absolutely clear. Emma's well-being is my first priority. If this arrangement ever seems to be causing her stress or interfering with her normal childhood development, we stop immediately. Agreed, Sophia said without hesitation. Michael, I have nieces Emma's age. I understand the importance of protecting childhood. What we're proposing is more like having Emma as a very special consultant who happens to be 6 years old. As they prepared to leave, Emma turned back to Sophia. Ms. Chen, do you have number feelings too? Sophia paused, and for a moment her professional composure slipped, revealing something more vulnerable underneath. Not like you do, Emma. I can see patterns in numbers, but I have to work very hard to understand what they mean. You see it naturally, like looking at a picture and immediately understanding the story it tells. Maybe I can teach you, Emma offered generously. I would like that very much, Sophia replied, and Michael heard genuine emotion in her voice. That evening, as Michael tucked Emma into bed, she asked him a question that had been on his mind all day. Daddy, is my brain different from other kids? Michael sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. Your brain is special, sweetheart. You can see patterns and relationships that most people can't see. That's a gift, but it doesn't make you better or worse than other children. It just makes you unique. Like how I can't ride a bike as well as Tommy, but I can see number feelings. Exactly like that. Everyone has different abilities. Yours just happen to be very unusual and very helpful to grown-ups who work with numbers. Emma considered this. Will people want me to help them because of my number feelings? Maybe. But remember, you never have to help if you don't want to. Your most important job is to be a kid, to play and learn and grow up happy. I like helping, Emma said sleepily. And I like the number pictures. They're like friends now. As Michael turned off her bedroom light, he realized that Emma's gift was becoming the center of not just his career, but their entire future. The opportunities were extraordinary, but so were the risks. He spent that night staring at the ceiling, wondering if he was making the right choices for his daughter, and hoping that Sophia Chen's intentions were as benevolent as they seemed. But something told him that Emma's abilities were going to lead them into territory that none of them fully understood yet. Dr. Sarah Martinez turned out to be everything Michael had hoped for in a child advocate. Warm, experienced, and fiercely protective of children's welfare. Her office at Technova was decorated with colorful artwork and comfortable furniture that immediately put Emma at ease during their first meeting Monday morning. Emma, I hear you're very good at understanding patterns, Dr. Martinez said, sitting cross-legged on the floor across from Emma, who was examining a set of wooden blocks with geometric shapes. I like patterns, Emma replied, arranging the blocks into a complex spiral. They tell stories. Dr. Martinez spent an hour talking with Emma while Michael observed, and he was impressed by the psychologist's ability to assess Emma's cognitive abilities while keeping the interaction playful and stress-free. Afterward, she met with Michael privately. Mr. Torres, Emma is remarkable, Dr. Martinez said. Her pattern recognition abilities are indeed extraordinary, but she's also emotionally well-balanced and secure. You've done an excellent job as her father. What's your assessment of involving her in Project Synthesis? As long as we maintain strict boundaries and keep her participation voluntary and enjoyable, I think it could actually be beneficial for her development. Children with exceptional abilities often feel isolated because they can't relate to their peers in certain areas. Having her talents recognized and valued could boost her self-confidence. And the risks? The primary risk would be creating pressure or expectations that make her feel like her worth depends on her performance. We need to ensure she understands that she's valued for who she is, not just what she can do. That afternoon, Sophia assembled the core Project Synthesis team for Emma's first official consultation session. Besides Michael, David, and Dr. Martinez, the group included 2 other senior developers, Dr. Patricia Wong and James Sullivan. Emma entered the conference room with her usual curiosity, immediately gravitating toward the wall displays that showed various market data patterns. These are different from the ones I saw before, she observed, studying a display that showed commodity trading patterns. These numbers are hungry? David quickly activated his recording equipment. Hungry how, Emma? They keep reaching for more, like when I haven't eaten lunch and I want to eat everything. But they're not happy hungry. They're worried hungry, like they might not get enough. Dr. Wong, who specialized in commodity market analysis, leaned forward with intense interest. Emma, that pattern represents grain futures during a drought period. The hungry behavior you're describing reflects market anxiety about food scarcity. That makes sense. Emma nodded. When I'm worried about not having enough of something, I act different too. Over the next 2 hours, Emma provided insights into dozen different pattern types, each observation more remarkable than the last. She identified market optimism as bouncy numbers, sector rotation as patterns that were exploring new friends, and market crashes as numbers that were falling down and can't get up. Most remarkably, her descriptions consistently aligned with the psychological factors that drove market behavior. Her intuitive understanding of pattern emotions translated directly into actionable insights about market psychology. Emma, Sophia said during a break, you've helped us understand these patterns better in 2 hours than we've managed in 2 years. How do you feel about that? Emma shrugged with characteristic 6-year-old modesty. It's just what the numbers tell me. Don't they tell you the same stories? Not like they tell you, David admitted. We have to use computers to analyze what you see naturally. After Emma left with Dr. Martinez for her regular afternoon activities, the development team gathered to discuss the implications of what they'd witnessed. This changes everything, Dr. Wong said. Emma's pattern interpretations are giving us insights into market psychology that we've never been able to quantify before. The applications go beyond financial markets, James Sullivan added. Pattern recognition of this caliber could revolutionize weather forecasting, medical diagnosis, social media analysis, any field that involves complex data interpretation. Michael felt a growing sense of unease as the conversation continued. The team's excitement was understandable, but he was beginning to grasp the full scope of how valuable Emma's abilities could be across multiple industries. We need to be very careful about how we proceed, he said. Emma's not a resource to be maximized. She's a 6-year-old girl who happens to have an unusual talent. Of course, Sophia agreed. But Michael, we can't ignore the potential impact of what Emma can contribute. Her insights could benefit millions of people across multiple fields. That evening, Michael discussed the day's events with Emma over dinner at their favorite pizza restaurant. Did you have fun with the number pictures today, sweetheart? Yes. They told me lots of different stories. But Daddy, some of the grown-ups looked at me funny. Funny how? Like when Tommy looks at my toys because he wants to play with them but doesn't want to ask. Michael felt a chill of recognition. Emma, with her child's intuition, had picked up on something he'd been sensing but hadn't wanted to acknowledge. The team was beginning to see her not just as a consultant, but as something to be studied and potentially controlled. Emma, remember what we talked about? You never have to help with the number pictures if you don't want to. I know, Daddy, but I like helping. And Ms. Chen said I'm the only person who can see the number stories the way I do. That's probably true, but that doesn't mean you have to use your special ability all the time. Emma nodded seriously, like how Superman doesn't have to use his super strength all the time. Exactly like Superman. Michael smiled, though privately he wondered if the superhero analogy was more apt than he'd intended. The following week brought a new development that confirmed Michael's growing concerns. Sophia called him into her office with news that Project Synthesis had attracted attention from some very powerful investors. Michael, I've been in discussions with Richardson Capital Management. They're interested in licensing our pattern recognition technology for their investment algorithms. Richardson Capital was one of the largest investment firms in the country, managing over $200 billion in assets. Their interest in Project Synthesis represented a potential breakthrough that could make Technova one of the most valuable companies in the tech industry. That's significant, Michael said carefully. Beyond significant. They're talking about a licensing deal that could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But there's a complication. Sophia activated her office display, showing a contract proposal. They want exclusive access to our most advanced pattern recognition algorithms, and they specifically want to understand the source of our breakthrough insights. Michael read through the relevant sections with growing alarm. The contract language was vague enough to be legally defensible, but specific enough to suggest that Richardson Capital had somehow learned about Emma's contributions to the project. Sophia, this contract seems to reference proprietary cognitive analysis methods. What does that mean? They know we've made breakthrough progress and they want to understand how. I haven't told them about Emma specifically, but they're asking questions that suggest they've heard rumors. What kind of questions? Questions about whether our advances are based on new AI development, or whether we have access to unique analytical perspectives that competitors couldn't replicate. Michael felt his protective instincts surge. You're not considering telling them about Emma, are you? I haven't decided. The financial implications are enormous, not just for Technova, but for your family's future. The equity options in your contract could be worth millions if this deal goes through. Sophia, Emma is not for sale, regardless of the financial implications. I'm not suggesting we sell her, Sophia replied quickly, but we might be able to structure an arrangement that protects her privacy while allowing us to benefit from her insights. Michael stood up from his chair, his decision crystallizing with sudden clarity. No, absolutely not. Emma's involvement in Project Synthesis was supposed to be limited and voluntary. I won't have her turned into a commodity for investment firms. Sophia's expression hardened slightly. Michael, you need to think about this carefully. Richardson Capital has the resources to reverse engineer our algorithms if they can't license them. If they figure out that our breakthrough came from analyzing pattern recognition abilities, they might seek out similar talents elsewhere. What are you saying? I'm saying that working with us, under controlled conditions with Dr. Martinez's oversight, might be safer for Emma than having her abilities become known to people who won't prioritize her welfare. Michael realized he was facing his first real test as both a developer and a father. The financial opportunities were staggering, but the risks to Emma's future were potentially enormous. I need time to think about this, he said finally. Of course, but Michael, I need an answer by Friday. Richardson Capital is flying their team here next week for demonstrations. That night, Michael sat at his kitchen table staring at Emma's drawings of happy numbers that she'd created after their first visit to Technova. The innocent joy in those pictures seemed to belong to a different world than the high-stakes corporate negotiations that were now swirling around his daughter's abilities. Emma appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, carrying her favorite stuffed rabbit. Daddy, why do you look sad? Michael pulled her onto his lap, holding her close. I'm thinking about important decisions, sweetheart. About the number pictures? About the number pictures, and about keeping you safe, and about doing what's best for our family. Emma was quiet for a moment, then looked up at him with the serious expression she wore when she was processing complex ideas. Daddy, sometimes the number pictures look scared because people want to use them for things they're not supposed to be used for. Michael stared at his daughter, wondering if she somehow intuited the situation they were facing. What do you mean, sweetheart? Numbers want to tell their true stories, but sometimes people try to make them tell different stories, and that makes the numbers scared and confused. As Michael tucked Emma back into bed, he realized that his 6-year-old daughter might have just provided the most insightful analysis of their situation that he'd heard from anyone. The question now was whether he could find a way to honor her wisdom while protecting their future. But time was running out, and powerful forces were already in motion that might be beyond his control to stop. Friday morning arrived with a decision that Michael had wrestled with all week. He'd barely slept, alternating between financial calculations that could secure Emma's future forever and worst-case scenarios where his daughter became a corporate asset rather than a child. The answer came to him while watching Emma eat breakfast, humming contentedly as she arranged her cereal into geometric patterns. She was happy, secure, and completely unaware that her life had become the subject of multi-million-dollar negotiations. That innocence was worth protecting at any cost. Sophia, Michael said as he entered her office that morning. My answer is no. Emma won't be part of any demonstration for Richardson Capital. Sophia had been expecting this response. Michael, sit down. There are things about this situation that you don't know. She activated her office display, showing a series of documents that made Michael's blood run cold. Richardson Capital had compiled a detailed analysis of Technova's recent breakthrough, including timeline correlations that suggested their advances coincided with the hiring of a new senior developer who had a child with exceptional abilities. They already know, Sophia said quietly. The question isn't whether to protect Emma's secret, it's how to protect Emma herself. Michael scanned the documents with growing horror. Richardson Capital had conducted background research not just on Technova's technical developments, but on Michael's employment history, Emma's daycare records, and even medical files that should have been confidential. This is impossible. How could they have accessed this information? Richardson Capital manages pension funds for government employees, including people who work in record-keeping departments. They have access to data sources that most companies couldn't reach. What do they want? Sophia pulled up another document, a formal proposal that took Michael's breath away. Richardson Capital was offering to create a trust fund for Emma worth $50 million in exchange for exclusive access to her pattern recognition insights for financial market analysis. $50 million, Sophia said, managed by independent trustees available to Emma when she turns 18. In exchange, she would spend 10 hours per week under Dr. Martinez's supervision, analyzing market patterns for Richardson Capital's investment algorithms. Michael stared at the numbers, but all he could see was his daughter's happy face disappearing under the weight of corporate expectations and predetermined obligations. "They want to buy 10 hours a week of her childhood for the next 12 years, he said. "That's not a job offer. It's a contract for indentured servitude. But it would guarantee her financial security for life," Sophia pointed out. "College tuition, graduate school, startup capital for any business she wants to pursue. She'd have every possible advantage, except the advantage of being a normal kid." Sophia was quiet for a long moment, then activated another display showing security camera footage from Technova's parking garage. "Michael, this is from yesterday afternoon. 3 different vehicles followed you and Emma from her daycare to your apartment. Richardson Capital isn't just interested in working with Emma. They're studying her routines, her vulnerabilities." Michael felt panic rising in his chest as he watched unmarked cars maintaining surveillance on his daughter. "What are you telling me?" "I'm telling you that Emma's abilities have become known to people who see her as a strategic asset worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Working with me, under controlled conditions, might be the safest option for both of you. Or we could leave, move to another city, change our names if necessary. With what money? And do you really think Richardson Capital would just give up on a capability that could revolutionize financial markets? They have resources to track you anywhere." Michael realized he was trapped. Emma's gift, which had seemed like a blessing that rescued them from poverty, was becoming a curse that threatened to steal her childhood and possibly her freedom. "There's a third option," Sophia said carefully. "Richardson Capital's interest is based on the assumption that Emma's abilities are unique and irreplaceable. But what if they weren't?" "What do you mean?" "Dr. Martinez has been researching exceptional pattern recognition abilities. She's identified 12 other children worldwide who show similar talents, though none quite as developed as Emma's. If we could demonstrate that pattern recognition abilities can be enhanced through training, rather than just inherited genetics." "You want to prove that Emma's abilities aren't unique?" "I want to prove that her approach to pattern recognition can be taught, at least partially. If Richardson Capital believes they could develop similar capabilities in other consultants, Emma becomes less valuable as an exclusive asset." Michael considered this. It was a risky strategy. If they succeeded in replicating Emma's insights, she might become less special. But if they failed, she remained a unique target for corporate exploitation. How would that work? Sophia pulled up research files that Dr. Martinez had compiled. "We bring in some of the other children for a collaborative project, not to compete with Emma, but to learn from her teaching abilities. Remember, she offered to teach me how to see number feelings. If she can teach pattern recognition concepts to other gifted children, that demonstrates reproducible methodology rather than irreplaceable individual talent. And if it works, Richardson Capital's exclusive interest diminishes because they realize they could potentially develop similar capabilities through training programs. Emma becomes one of several talented consultants, rather than a singular strategic asset." It was clever, but Michael saw the flaw immediately. What if Richardson Capital decides they want to control the entire group of children instead of just Emma? "That's a risk," Sophia admitted. "But 12 families across 6 countries would be much harder to monitor and control than one family in one city. They'd face legal challenges from multiple jurisdictions, international attention, and coordination problems that would make the venture impractical." Michael spent the weekend thinking about Sophia's proposal while watching Emma play in their neighborhood park. She climbed on playground equipment with the same fearless enthusiasm she brought to mathematical patterns, completely unaware that her future was being negotiated by adults with competing interests. Monday morning brought an unexpected development. Dr. Martinez arrived at Technova with news that changed everything. "Michael, Sophia, I've been contacted by Dr. James Chen, no relation to Sophia, from the Stanford Center for Cognitive Development. He's been studying exceptional abilities in children for 20 years, and he wants to meet Emma." "Another researcher wanting to study her?" Michael asked wearily. "Not exactly. Dr. Chen believes that children like Emma represent a natural evolution in human cognitive abilities. He thinks their pattern recognition capabilities are an adaptive response to increasingly complex information environments." Dr. Martinez activated a presentation showing research from multiple universities. He's not interested in exploiting these abilities for commercial purposes. He wants to create a protected research environment where gifted children can develop their talents while maintaining normal childhood experiences. What does that mean practically? Sophia asked. It means Emma could work with other children like herself, learning from each other, while being protected by academic research protocols rather than corporate interests. Michael felt a spark of hope. Academic protection would be stronger than corporate safeguards. Much stronger. University research protocols include independent oversight, ethical review boards, and legal protections that corporations can't match. And Dr. Chen's program specifically focuses on nurturing exceptional abilities rather than maximizing their commercial value. That afternoon, Michael made his decision. When Sophia asked for his final answer about the Richardson Capital proposal, he had an alternative to suggest. I want Emma to meet Dr. Chen. If his program can offer her the chance to develop her abilities while staying protected from commercial exploitation, that's the path we choose. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. Michael, you realize this means walking away from $50 million? I'm walking toward something more valuable, Emma's right to control her own future. 2 weeks later, Michael and Emma sat in Dr. Chen's office at Stanford University, surrounded by children's artwork and mathematical models that seemed to dance with the same energy Emma brought to pattern recognition. Emma, Dr. Chen said, I understand you can see feelings in number patterns. Yes, but they're not really feelings, Emma replied with the precision that still amazed Michael. It's more like the patterns show me what would happen if numbers had feelings. Dr. Chen smiled. That's the most accurate description of intuitive pattern recognition I've ever heard from anyone, adult or child. Will there be other kids here who can see number feelings too? Emma asked. There will be other children who see patterns in special ways. Some see them in music, some in colors, some in shapes. You might be able to learn from each other. Emma's face lit up with excitement. Can I teach them about number feelings? I think that would be wonderful. And Emma, everything you do here will be because you want to do it, not because anyone needs you to do it. As they toured the research facility, Michael watched Emma interact with other gifted children who understood what it meant to see the world differently. For the first time since her abilities had been discovered, she seemed to be in an environment where her gift was valued without being commoditized. That evening, as they flew back to their home city to pack for their move to California, Emma asked him a question that confirmed he'd made the right decision. Daddy, will the numbers at the new place tell happier stories? I think they will, sweetheart. I think they'll tell stories about children who get to be children, even when they can do special things. Emma smiled and returned to her coloring book, drawing pictures of numbers that looked like they were dancing with joy. Michael watched her work and realized that sometimes the most important pattern to recognize was the difference between what was valuable and what was truly precious. 6 months later, Technova's Project Synthesis achieved breakthrough success using insights derived from Emma's early consultations, but developed through reproducible training methodologies. Richardson Capital successfully licensed the technology, but their exclusive interest had shifted to the systematic approaches rather than individual consultants. Emma thrived at Dr. Chen's research center, developing her abilities while maintaining the wonder and joy that made her special in ways that transcended any commercial application. She learned from other gifted children and taught them in return, becoming part of a community that valued her for who she was, not just what she could do. And Michael discovered that the greatest pattern recognition ability of all was knowing when to say no to opportunities that looked perfect but felt wrong, and yes to possibilities that looked uncertain but felt like home. The numbers, Emma would have said, finally looked truly happy.